When everything we consume is the worst thing ever by some mouth breather on the internet, how is anything truly the worst thing ever? Time for the only podcast to officially create a list of the worst movies ever made. The only one. For real. Worst movies ever.
Worst movies ever. I was told by a friend who listened to episode 2 about Sex Android that I made it sound like I loved that movie. I want it to be clear, guys. Just because I'm upbeat and laughing and enjoying the stupidity of these movies that we're talking about, it doesn't mean I like them. And to be clear, very clear, Sex Android is not a movie I enjoy. I thought I was pretty, straightforward and on the level about that. But just so that my bud knows, and we texted this out, so he pretty much does, I don't like Sex Android. The verdict that we came down on that is that while I may not like it, I'm sure there's some D-gen out there touching his pee-pee that loves it. And I feel that's a perfect segue into the movie we're going to discuss here today on the podcast, Death Nurse, made in 1987 by the uncopyable, shot-on-video shit film legend, Nick Millard. A lot of you that have tuned into this podcast aren't aware of my old podcasts and our past excursions into the universe, the collective universe of Nick Millard. But on this podcast in particular, on the Patreon, we actually covered Crazy Fat Ethel 2. And it was determined that wasn't one of the worst movies ever, much to the chagrin of one of my Patreon subscribers. But here we are. Nick Millard's back on the chopping block today for the podcast. And those of you out there that don't know who Nick Millard is, French director, very well known for having a very singular kind of shit film style and voice where the moment you turn on a Nick Millard movie, it's unmistakable who made that. Because I'm almost of the mind, and a good friend of mine, Eric, turned me on to his films years ago. I'm of the mind that Nick Millard's never actually seen a movie before. Nick Millard may have been an alien posing as a human being, attempting to make stories in a way that he feels humans actually do, but they don't. Because none of this shit makes sense. Not a single one of Nick Millard's movies can be misconstrued as being a typical normal film. If today is the first day you've ever heard the name Nick Millard and have no idea about his extensive catalog of shot on video, just fucking weirdo cinema, I hope today we direct you and steer you in the direction, if you are so inclined. Because let me tell you, Nick Millard's cinema isn't for the weak. He does everything from really shitty horror movies to shitty adult films to some of the most hilariously shitty action movies I've ever seen, all on about 5 cents. Nick Millard, in the best sense possible, obviously, and I feel like I say this too much on the podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway. Your mileage is going to, vary depending on your sensibilities for this kind of thing. But he is absolutely outsider art. There is really nothing out there that is similar to his style. You may see other shot on video films that they feel kind of and look kind of like Nick Millard movies, but nothing, absolutely nothing. Much like Neil Breen or an Andy Milligan or an Ed Wood, They have, from frame one, 100% who made this movie. And honestly, I celebrate that kind of bullshit to the fullest. I love when we get into these little like spirals in shit cinema and you find these quote unquote auteurs that basically just keep churning out films because they don't know any fucking thing else in their entire life. You gotta love that determination. You gotta love the heart behind something like that. Today, whether or not you're gonna love Death Nurse, the film that we're gonna talk about, maybe a hard sell for you today. Death Nurse, made in 1987, starring, and she was a star in a lot of his films. Priscilla Alden is the story of a murderous, overweight nurse named Edith and her brother that run a medical clinic out of their suburban home. They take in patients, kill them, and then continue to bill the state for their care while burying them in the backyard. However, a nosy county inspector threatens to complicate this foul family business. So what are they going to do? I tell you what we're going to do. Try and stay a fucking awake. Because even at 57 minutes long, this movie was so hard to sit through for the entire runtime. Without letting the cat out of the bag, let me just preface this by saying this was a really tough one for me to determine whether or not I would put this on the list of the worst movie ever. Because I think for the first half hour of this movie, I actually was enjoying it. I thought it was silly. I thought the performances, the non-performances, I should say, these aren't actors. These are just regular ass people that he got to fucking be in these movies. They are so camp and so alien in how they act and what they do. And the scenario is interesting enough that you are slightly entertained for a little bit. But then once you figure out halfway through the movie that it's just literally the same thing over and over and over and over, and then the thing just fucking ends, you kind of are left going, oh man, I could have done fucking anything else other than watch this movie. So because I enjoyed a part of this movie, I can't say it's one of the worst movies ever. This teeters real fucking close though, because there is such a hard wall that happens about halfway through this movie. And it may be different for you if you're watching something like this, where you realize that this movie doesn't evolve, that the story doesn't change, and that you're kind of stuck just watching what this movie is, which is like a 5-cent shot on video film shot in some dude's fucking apartment with non-actors, barely any lighting, no score, horrible noise floor. In editing, like somebody took a fucking chainsaw to a goddamn VHS tape. That fucking man. It's a rough one. So giddy up. Let's go on to the goods, the bads, and the what the fucks of this one.
What is good?
My biggest good of this movie, even having said everything that I just said, is that this is typical Nick Millard buffoonery. And for those of you that aren't familiar with him, it always feels like an alien made these movies because the things that come out of their mouths, the way that the people speak, the way that they act, the scenarios, the dialogue, it all feels so disconnected from reality that it really just feels like it doesn't feel like you are going to like immerse yourself in this world at all. These are ironic watches. You don't like jump into a Nick Millard movie feeling like you're being transported into another escapist reality to sit in. This is a piece of art that you look at and that is so abrasive that it becomes a reflection of what your sensibilities are. What is your sense of humor? Are you going to find this funny, or are you going to just absolutely reject it outright? And in that way, there's sometimes these kind of things have a certain charm to them. And Nick Millard's just, it's so bad. His movies are always so bad that it's hard not to see them as comedies. It's almost nearly impossible to not see them as ironic comedies. And maybe they were. I doubt they were. Death Nurse, more than just about anything I've seen of his, felt comedic. Felt like they were trying to have fun. And in that, you know what? I find that to be good. I think the opening scene of this movie is fucking hilarious. The opening sequence is a surgery, obviously in someone's living room, where this doctor, who has basically just like a washcloth for a mask, asks the nurse, the death nurse, if you want to say, for a scalpel. And then we get an insert shot of what looks to be a bunch of kitchen knives, as if they're the scalpels. From that moment on, it should clue you in. We aren't watching anything that's trying to take itself seriously at all. And you wonder, how did this place get like become an accredited healthcare facility? Has nobody, as an inspector, not gone through this place? Has nobody like pushed forward to like assure that any patients are getting quality care? Not supposed to think about that stuff. So we get to the kitchen knives, and then when he goes to open the guy up, he just stabs the motherfucker to death with this kitchen knife. He then, after he's done stabbing, wipes his brow and looks at the nurse and goes, "Hey, notify the family. This was a difficult surgery, but we lost the patient." And then we get an insert shot of a bunch of various sizes of kitchen knives sticking straight out of a dummy's chest. That shit was so good. There's another scene where they attempt to do another surgery, and the guy needed a heart transplant, and they didn't have a heart to give him. So they attempt to like cut out their dog's heart and replace it with the guy. And obviously that shit don't work. There's a chase sequence in which they chase a cat around a bed endlessly that just goes on for so long that's obvious comedy. So, I mean, even though this movie looks like it was filmed on a nickel, it, in fits and spurts, it is actually pretty funny, and I enjoyed that. Priscilla Alden, and this is another good, who is the death nurse, always is enjoyable in her camp. And she brings the proceedings up a little bit because she actually, compared to the rest of the people that deliver everything so flatly that you would think that they reanimated corpses to try and speak these lines, but she actually delivers it like an actress would deliver it. And there's a lot of charm in what otherwise is just a complete and utter shit show. But the shit show and its ineptitude is where the vast majority, and this is obviously going to be up to your sensibilities, is a lot of where the charm lies with a Nick Millard film. If you are not into things that are so rickety that if you looked at them sideways, they would fall apart, then steer way clear of Death Nurse. Steer way clear of anything Nick Millard's ever done, because these things are barely put together. They hardly feel like regular movies that we're used to. But for those of you out there that are willing to push past that and like outsider art, Death Nurse may be for you, and Nick Millard may be for you. And to me, nothing resembles anything that normal humans do in these movies, and I find that charming and hilarious. The final good that I'm going to say about this movie, and I said this before, it's 57 minutes long, and it's pretty much to the point. There's some padding in this movie, and we'll get to that in the bads, but it's oddly really watchable for people that, as I had said before, are predisposed for complete and utter horseshit. But let's get to those bads.
What is bad?
As I said before, this is the absolute dirt floor level shot on video production. With hacksaw level editing at times. Obviously looks like almost like a deck-to-deck tape editing situation at times. The office is literally just someone's house. The visual quality is literally all over the place. We cut from what looks like it was just a VHS camcorder to somebody like a 15th generation dub of one of his old films that he shot on film, and he cut those into it. There's such a wide disparity between the visual quality of some of the clips in this movie. The audio is so awful. And the shot-to-shot noise floor is so noticeable. And for those of you out there that don't know what noise floor is, when you are recording something and you hear just the general room tone, and sometimes it'll sound like shh. When this thing cuts, there are cuts that go from shh to shh, cut to cut to cut to cut. General room tone all over the fucking place. The microphone, obviously just the camera microphone, so it's fucking reverberated and boomy and roomy all over. When you see corpses, because the vast majority of this film is just fucking Priscilla Alden going from room to room whenever they get a new patient and just killing them. When they show the corpses fucking shot to shot, eyes move, chests move. When they drag the corpses out to the yard in order for them to be buried in the backyard, like no one would notice. They're just like mounds of fucking dirt from all these corpses. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Not convincing corpses. No one in this movie is an actor whatsoever other than Priscilla Alden. She's the only one who even remotely resembles an actor in this movie. And one of the biggest things that may get to you after about 20 minutes is that there's literally no score in this movie. Other than when he goes and takes shots from his old movies and puts them in, there's a score all over those shots that abruptly fucking edits and cuts off the moment he cuts the new footage. And for some reason, we're to believe that these things are happening at the same time. Like there's this sequence where she goes to feed parts of one of the corpses that they killed to collect the fucking money from insurance. She takes them downstairs to a bunch of rats that she's raising. And the rats are fucking shots from one of his old movies. So we cut from a shot on video, silent fucking shot, to this fucking shot of rats with music, to no fucking music. And it's fucking so terrible. So fucking terrible. And in most Nick Millard movies, for some reason, and this is another bad, people just sit and eat for long periods of time to pad out the runtime of this. Every movie of his I've ever seen, there are scenes of people eating for no reason. Most shots in general, and I'll just put this out there, most shots in this movie hang on well past when they should be cut. Even though this movie trims out most of the fat a lot of these movies would have, there are moments that you start to notice, what the fuck is this in here for? And why are we still in this shot? Inexplicable. All the death scenes in this movie are the same for the most part. Once Edith starts offing everyone, and none of it's convincing. Literally, they check in a patient, the doctor sees them, he either kills them or she kills them, and then they take them out to the yard. This is just rinse and repeated over and over and over for 57 minutes of this movie. As I had said before, after 30 minutes, this movie is an absolute chore. And you've seen everything that it has to offer in that first half. Then my final bad is the movie just fucking ends. Like, there's no fucking real ending to this movie. It's almost like the people get caught for what they're doing. And then they're just sitting there in chairs exacerbated. Like, what are we going to do? And then it just ends. And as far as we know, there's Death Nurse 2 out there. So obviously something happens to them, right? I don't know. Will we ever watch Death Nurse 2? I'm sure we will at some point, but we don't know what happens to them because nothing fucking happens to them in this movie. They kill all these people, collect the insurance money, a cop shows up, and then nothing happens to them. The end. Let's get to the what the fucks.
What the fuck is that?
There's a scene in which the doctor, who's the brother of the nurse, the death nurse, the titular death nurse, is scooping a bowl of ice cream. He does this. He goes, scoops, puts one in the bowl, scoops, puts one in the mouth, scoop, one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. What a fucking savage. I was like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And who would want his fucking shitty, like, backwash ice cream? I was just fucking so repulsed by it. Another what the fuck is when they're doing this, like, you know, rope-a-dope with the Medicaid and Medicare of these patients that they're murdering and collecting the checks off of. And I realized this was made in 1987. But they're only charging Medicare $27.50. This doesn't sound like a lucrative deal. So they're willing to, let me get this right. Like, what the fuck? $27.50. They're willing to murder people that obviously will have a paper trail for $27.50 a pop. And they just like, and maybe, you know, back in the day it was easier to fucking like hide all of this shit. But all they do is like these people, they kill them basically within hours of them being there, or maybe half a day of them being there. And whenever anybody comes back to check, oh, they already left. Where did they go? I don't know where they went. They're not here anymore, but we checked them out. Here's the paperwork saying that they got checked out. Nobody fucking follows up on anything in this world. Another thing, by this point, Nick Millard basically only had older people in these movies. So if you like watching elderly people horror movies, Death Nurse is absolutely for you. So many fucking older people in this. Like, what? And then the final what the fuck, which may be the coup de grace, is that there's this one guy, this patient that gets brought in for tuberculosis. They kill him, bury him, and then the social worker wants to come and check in on him to make sure that everything's all right. So Death Nurse tells the fucking surgeon, the doctor, hey, go unbury him, bring him back in. We need to have a visit with the lady. So there's a sequence in which he basically drags him out of the fucking hole in the ground that he had made and takes a fucking garden hose and just sprays him the fucking off. So there's a whole sequence where this corpse, this obviously not dead guy, full of dirt, just gets hosed off with a fucking garden hose. It's so fun. And then after that, when they take him back in for the visit, the doctor is on the side of the bed, just waving his arm around from the floor. Pure cinema, guys. Pure cinema. And that's what we got for Death Nurse. That's all I got on this episode for Death Nurse. Whether or not you're going to like this kind of buffoonery, I don't know, man. It is such a low rent piece of shit that I was 100% like the first 30 minutes of this movie was like, fucking A, dude, thumbs up. This is the kind of bullshit I love. And then by the halfway point, when it was just rinse and repeat the same thing for another 20 minutes, I couldn't wait for it to be done. So this was kind of a rough one. But there are worse out there. You may not feel that way. I know one particular person's going to be so pissed off at me that I gave Nick Millard another pass, but fuck it. That's how this podcast goes, bud. But that's it for this episode of Worst Movies Ever. I actually already watched the movie for the next episode, so I can announce episode 5 is going to be about the David Sterling produced, oh my God, Predator ripoff, Unseen Evil. Oh boy, guys. Get ready. That's the next episode of Worst Movies Ever. So until then, go celebrate some fucking trash. Whether or not it's Nick Millard, that's up to you, I guess.
Worst Movies Ever podcast is executive produced by Vaughn Kuhlmeyer and Shannon Smith. For more Worst Movies Ever, and to make the Doctor watch your worst movies ever, subscribe to the Worst Movies Ever Patreon at patreon.com/Worst Movies Ever. There you will get a monthly exclusive WME podcast plucked from the user-generated film list, randomized episode to episode. Until next time, celebrate trash at all costs. Toodles.